Welcome back to the Ethical Entrepreneur, a speaker series to help entrepreneurs and business owners just like you create more ethical and sustainable businesses. I'm Marika Timmers, and I am delighted today to be speaking with Dave Rouse about simplifying climate action for business. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, how are you?
Good, thanks. Very well. Excited about our conversation. A little bit about Dave before we dive in. Among many impressive accolades, Dave is an award-winning entrepreneur and philanthropist. He's owned over a dozen businesses and a charity, as well as holding numerous board positions. As the CEO of CarbonClick, Dave leads a team that is dedicated to reversing the effects of climate change. And they do that by connecting millions of people to projects that reduce pollution and restore nature. So Dave, you've made it your life's mission to restore the environment and our connection to it. Why is this so important right now?
I think right now we're almost past the tipping point where we've ignored a lot of warning signs for so long. You know, we've decided to argue about them instead of just taking action, because the cost of inaction is so much greater if the science is right than inaction if the science is wrong. And I don't think we have the beauty of time on our side anymore. I think if you pay attention to the IPCC reports and what some of the science is saying is, you know, we've got a lot of inertia behind global warming and climate change, ocean acidification to overcome. So if we stop right now, we've still got a lot of headaches for the next decade ahead of us. And we know that we can't stop right now. We can only start slowing down the flywheel, as you might refer it to. If we don't start slowing that flywheel down now, whatever we don't do now is just going to compound and compound and compound, and our children and their grandchildren are going to have a pretty rough time enjoying any sort of life like we've been able to enjoy.
Yeah. And so for all of those people out there listening to this and feeling like, wow, that problem is huge, as someone who has clearly taken action, what would you say to someone who thinks, oh, it's taken on a life of its own, the problem is too big, what can I do?
Yeah, obviously we can't. If we all take that view, then nothing changes. You know, you are the change, I'm the change, our viewers, you are all the change. Unless we change ourselves, we can't change the world.
Yeah, and we'll get into, you know, how you can help some of the audience make those changes as well. And because it's not all, you don't have to do it all on your own, right? There are a lot of people and businesses out there to support you.
Yeah, absolutely. And at least, you know, we'll be able to look our grandchildren in the eyes and say, hey, we did our part. We tried to fix this. We may or may not have been successful and we just don't know yet, but at least we can, hand on heart, say we were the ones that tried.
Yeah. And I love that word connection and connection to the land. As Kiwis, that's kind of ingrained in us, right? But with a global audience, do you mind just elaborating a bit on what that connection means, the connection to the environment?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I grew up probably with more connection to the environment than most. I had, you know, we lived out in the Waitakaris, which is a beautiful bush area west of Auckland, kind of halfway between the city and a fairly remote black sand beaches, which New Zealand is quite famous for some of these beaches. And we were in the bush. We didn't have the beauty of being able to pop down to the local supermarket on a regular basis. So we had to plan everything. We didn't have a regular rubbish collection. So we had to plan how to live with minimal waste, because otherwise it was just a hassle. Whereas now it's just so easy. Our life, the city life, is conducive to everything being wrapped sometimes several times in several layers of plastic. It's easy to just put stuff in a bin because it disappears, and therefore we we ignore the problem because we don't see the problem. It would be very different if we were all living next to landfills and seeing those impacts. But similarly, from a carbon perspective, it's a really difficult one because we can't see carbon dioxide. It's an invisible gas. So therefore, we don't make a clear connection between what we're doing on a daily basis and climate change that's happening and ocean acidification that's happening. It's almost impossible for most of us to build that bridge in our minds. So therefore, it's out of sight, out of mind, and we don't take action.
Yeah. So what is the role you think business has to play in restoring that?
Well, I think business have a moral obligation to help to drive that change for two reasons. One is that it's better for business. There's an increasing part of the market that is aware of their footprint and sustainability, and they're starting to demand those options, or at least spend their money with the businesses that have made those investments to do things properly, do things right. But on the flip side, a business has a huge amount of influence over its customers. If you're manufacturing biscuits and you decide to wrap them in one less layer of plastic or in plant-based materials, for example, or sell them in reusable containers that you bring back, you're driving that change because your consumers still want your biscuits and they're still going to buy your biscuits. But if you can show some leadership, which you have every opportunity to do, you can help change a lot more than an individual can change. So a leader within a business has that power, and therefore I think the moral obligation to use that power for good.
Yeah, I love that.
The other
a good business, but also good for business, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think governments are quite slow to be able to bring laws to pass, whereas a business, at most they've got a board to get an idea passed, and usually they meet quarterly. You're not talking years to get law changes in place. A business can literally change the way it does things pretty quickly, and the smaller the business, the faster you can spool up and just do things differently from tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I love working with small businesses. It's that pace of change and being able to see those results really quickly. So the Industrial Revolution, and many would say capitalism in general, have not always been in alignment with the needs of the environment, and that's probably an understatement. Is the tide changing, and if so, how?
Yeah, the tide's changing from a couple of perspectives. One is the resources that we're seeing an increased cost to draw our unsustainable lifestyles from, probably with the exception of oil and gas so far, but hopefully, those
it's only a matter of time.
Costs go up, and this is where governments can step in as well. But secondly, land is becoming more expensive. As populations expand, they need places to live. If we keep using them for landfills, that becomes increasingly expensive to treat and dump our waste. So there's an increasing cost pressure, as well as the increasing social pressure. We're seeing our oceans filled with plastics, single-use plastics, and our fish species being not only under threat from over-harvesting and unsustainable fishing practices, but also from human pollution as well. We're seeing, the coral reefs that we so desperately want to go and explore being subject to acidification from high carbon dioxide concentrations. And the ocean is part of that sink. Just like climate change in the atmosphere, the ocean absorbs carbon dioxide as well, and it forms carbonic acid, a bit like, fizzy drinks that rot your teeth. It's the same principle.
Right. Yeah. Nice analogy. So what opportunities does that present for business owners and innovative entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity is huge. You can do it, like I say, for the good reasons, and you should be doing it for the good reasons, in that you can change the way that you supply products to or services to your audience, to your clients. And the beauty is, if you leverage what you're doing that's good in your marketing, without it being greenwashing, then that results in you accessing a part of the market which is either moving away from you or moving towards you. And that's really good for business. You know, if you can be seen as the more sustainable choice compared with your competitive friends in the industry, people will start migrating to you, or at least you're protecting that patch from others in this space who are stealing your market, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you deserve to win those clients. You know, making the right choices should win you business, and you should do well and prosper as a result of it, because that's what the earth needs. The earth needs the more sustainably focused businesses to be prospering and doing well, so that we shift the nature of the whole business platform. Obviously, governments have a lot to answer for in this space as well, because they should be playing a level playing field with everybody else also. But in the meantime, you're very lucky that right now consumers are making these choices themselves.
Yeah. And that's only growing as consumers become more informed as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. And you look at in New Zealand, for example, in the latest Climate Commission reports that they want to phase out electric vehicles in 10 years' time. Phase out petrol vehicles, private vehicles in 10 years' time from being sold new. But the governments are moving so slowly. In 10 years' time, you won't be able to buy petrol vehicles because they won't be on the market. You know, this is the problem that we have, is by the time a government has brought any law into effect, it's way too late, and the market's already moved. Businesses have the opportunity to capitalize on that now and get a leadership role in that space and build that market. We're seeing that in the electric vehicles markets with the car dealers who are specializing in those areas and gaining a lot of respect from the market for being experts in those areas. You know, in 10 years' time, those will be the ones that are really prospering while their peers are struggling.
Yeah. So you talk about leadership, and it's that first mover advantage, right? So
Absolutely.
even if you're in a mature market, this is going to give you competitive advantage.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Amazing. What's also amazing is the work that you guys are doing at CarbonClick. So you've created a really easy way for businesses and individuals to reduce their climate impact. How does it work?
Yeah, so I guess many people will be familiar with offsetting or carbon offsetting by when they've booked flights in the past, and you've seen a little tick box where you can offset the impact of your flight. And what happens when you tick that little box is that either trees are planted or protected, and clean energy is installed to replace dirty energy as a macro kind of view of it. So that has quite a lot of power behind the scenes. The problem is that a lot of people don't have the transparency of knowing where that dollar has gone. So those offsetting programs have struggled to get, you know, more than 5 to 10% uptake. And that's what CarbonClick has kind of reinvented, is providing full traceability and transparency with every single click that happens. So we're connecting beautiful projects all around the world to people who want to do good, both business and individuals. And the ways that we do that, firstly, we have a lot of research that goes into the carbon offset projects to make sure that they bring biodiversity benefits and social benefits well beyond just the carbon. So you're genuinely helping to restore the planet. You're not just offsetting carbon. And at the point of sale, so if you're selling something online, you've got an e-commerce site, we can put the little green button there, which allows your consumers to click that button, just like when they're offsetting the flight, to offset the carbon footprint of that purchase. Or if you don't know the carbon footprint of that purchase, we've had a lot of success with people just putting a generic carbon offset amount, which is loosely related to the carbon footprint of that project. The most important thing to the customers is that if they're putting $2 into having a climate impact, they want to see where it's going, and they want it to go to a good cause. They're not as concerned about directly relating the calculation to what they're purchasing at that time, because we're all doing lots of purchasing. And so it's whenever people see the green button, it's an opportunity to do some good to make up for all of the impact that we're having in the wider world. So the green button on websites is one way, but for businesses as well, they can choose to offset their products and have them as carbon neutral products, or carbon offset products. They can also support their staff and influence their staff, so they can subscribe their staff to individual offset plans so that all of their team can be climate friendly as an employee benefit. And this has shown really positive results with the likes of Sky City, who implemented a program like this and had better staff retention rates and better attraction of a wider pool of staff who felt more values aligned by being part of a company that was helping them to learn and care. And then as an individual, you can go onto our website and you can calculate your carbon footprint if you just want to understand it, but you can also subscribe to offset your life. So we always want to make sure you're reducing your footprint first, and we give you some tips and tricks on how to do that. But we've always got a residual that we allow you to offset funding beautiful projects. So that's just for individuals. If you want to do something over and above what you're already doing to reduce your footprint, this is a really helpful way. And these projects really do need our help because they're underpriced at the moment. The carbon market is basically you have to work for below a livable wage, and we're trying to raise those standards for tree planting projects. Everybody's doing it for a passion, but we want to raise the bar so that these projects can really prosper and farmers can do this as a way of life, restoring the land in places that are uneconomic and difficult to farm, and places that have been victim of, I guess you refer to the Industrial Revolution, and commercialization of areas that shouldn't have been.
Yeah, I love that, the way of life, because that's really what we're creating here for the future too, isn't it? The way of life. So if we can't...
Absolutely. And these forests, they'll be the next in New Zealand. I love the great bushwalks that we've got, the Milford Tracks and so on. These forests will be the next Milford Track. They'll be providing ecotourism jobs for future generations to enjoy and explore and reconnect with nature, as well as doing their job of restoring our atmosphere and helping to provide a bit of balance back to the planet. Yeah.
So something for everyone. If you're a solopreneur, go and check out that carbon calculator. Footprint calculator. I will be doing the same, and Dave, you've inspired me. We should have a chat offline about how we offset the footprint of this event, not just our chat, but all of these chats, because just by nature of using the technology that we're using to communicate and to engage our audience, there's a footprint there, right?
Absolutely. And that's the unavoidable stuff. We want to stay connected with the world. We want to be part of a community, and we don't want to be disengaged. We need laptops, we need phones, we need the energy that supplies them, and sometimes we can minimize all of that. New Zealand's 85% renewable energy as well, and hopefully we get to 100%, but there's always going to be a footprint to create the batteries and to create the grids and maintain them and so on that we just can't avoid.
Okay, you've inspired me. So final question, and this is one that our audience will be familiar with because I ask a lot of our speakers the same thing. As someone who started a business and a charity, or a number of businesses and a charity, if you knew then what you now know when you started out, what would you do differently?
I guess the main thing that I would do differently is address the carbon footprint a lot earlier. I always addressed pollution, and I saw that as, particulates which were visible, contaminants like smog. but I never had any idea that carbon dioxide was such a problem, when it was, like anything on this planet, when there's an equilibrium point and then there's excess. And I didn't consider properly what would happen when an excess of carbon dioxide was present in our atmosphere. So I probably would have endured a lot more research and effort into the less visible things that we could address.
Right. Yeah. Perfect. So you mentioned earlier that you've got a number of technology integrations for businesses as well. And I understand that you've just launched Magento and WooCommerce. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about those integrations for businesses, and if there are any businesses out there who want to trial this, and maybe share some of the PR benefits around how this works with Magento and WooCommerce, get in touch with Dave and his team. Do you want to add to that, Dave?
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, if you have an e-commerce site, we're a pretty natural partner. We trialed this not only with customized sites, which that's pretty straightforward, but also with some of the big platform providers. So Shopify was the first one that we did last year. And that was I guess a roaring success, both for the early adopters who got the benefit of the PR that we used them as case studies, but also, that scaled quite exponentially, quite quickly. And those Shopify store owners saw better results, better conversion as a result of just adding that green button to their carts. So now we've expanded that to Magento and WooCommerce, which are just launched in the last week. So we're looking for early adopters to gain that PR and be able to leverage that. And also, if you got in touch with us and mentioned that you've been watching this webinar on the ethical entrepreneur, then we'll look after you, probably double the free trial period, and give you a bit of red carpet treatment at no extra cost.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Dave, and thanks so much for your time. We are out of time. I have really enjoyed our chat, and I'm going to take you up on some of those actions to reduce my business impact on the environment. I hope you all do too. Take action today, and I'll see you again tomorrow.
Thanks, Marika.